And we're live. 1, 2, 3. We've got recording going as well, just in case the audio doesn't work. We had a few little glitches in the audio last week. Just didn't have time to edit it and put the new audio that's recorded through the little iMac workstation here. Let's have a look at the round 5. Those who picked more than 4 out of the 8 games, you did pretty well. So I'll just move that a little bit down. But on the Thursday night match, we did collect our EPAW selection with Sebastian Chris going over in the dying seconds of the match. What a try that was. A fantastic try. Sebastian Chris had a blinder as well. And also game 2, Scotty's standout of Cowboys, 100 smackaroonies at the $4 juicy odds of $4.85, and he was dancing on the ceiling, literally with Lionel in New Zealand. He actually rang me from New Zealand over there with Oztag, and he was most excited when Cowboys beat the reigning, going for five premierships. Okay, it is the score 24-20. This went down to the wire, as we know. Sharks have just teased their fans so much of late. Let's have a look at the stats to see what exactly happened. Both Scotty from the Monster Tipping Cup here, Scotty and our little co-host, and Peter also said that Nico Hines is just not being utilised in that in the role that he's in there. He's still getting confused with not Brenton Nakora, but with Tricky Trendle. And speaking of Brenton Nakori, Sebastian Chris was our banker. Had we done it the other way around, and I usually have Brenton Nakora as the banker, then we would have cleaned up with the Hudson Young one as well. So Hudson Young went over for a double. Matty Nicholson, he's been scoring once every 2 matches, fantastic contribution. And Sebastian Chris, because we only had Sebastian Chris with the one leg, the 2 other combos of Brenton Nakora and Hudson Young, we could have got 3 legs there. But as it is, I'll give you the standout. You can have the standout if you want, or the 3 or 4 players. I'll give you, just mix and match them. But you would have done pretty good this week with most of our tips. Let's have a look here. And the penalty goals, it was 1 from 1 for Cronulla. Nick Hines got 3 conversions and 4 out of 4 for Fogarty. He had a big game as well. And even though Hudson Young got sent to the sin bin, he had an exquisite game. At half-time, of course, it was all locked up at 18 apiece. And we're just looking here down to the main stats here. Now, the possession was 52% to Cronulla and only 48% to Canberra. The all meters run, pretty much similar there. However, a lot more running from Cronulla. The kicks, 23-22, that's pretty even Stevens. Kicking metres, a lot more from Canberra there, 684 to only 587 for the Sharks. Tackles made, this is amazing. 426 tackles made. They were out on their haunches there, Canberra, to only 567 for the Cronulla Sharks. The tackles made, 426 for Canberra. How did they win the game? It was an amazing effort from Ricky's mob. And 386 to Cronulla. The missed tackles, only 24. Here is the linchpin. 24 missed tackles for Canberra. And listen to this, Cronulla Sharks, 31. The most tackles, 47, Blake Brayley, an absolute workhorse. Matty Nicholson, 46. And just looking else at the other stats there, line breaks, Hudson Young, probably the man of the match, no doubt about it, especially scoring a double. He's really, since he put the Australian Guernsey on, in the Pacific Championships, he's really grown a leg. He'd be one that you'd stand out with no problem as far as being your banker is concerned. But as I said, our new rule is not just to have the banker and stand out 2 or 3 legs when we're giving you our anytime try scorers, but we're suggesting after the weekend we had so many doubles that could have just been like a multi-quinella where you have all your second, third, and fourth selection all boxed. I think that's the way to go because there was a lot of money to be made there on the weekend. We'll go over to the next game, Matt. The next match. That was a fantastic game to watch. I was only listening on the radio, and then I watched the extended replay of all the matches. But to hear it, it was so exciting as well on ABC radio with Moore and Luke Lewis. Funny bugger, but very, very accurate. Knows the game inside out. So a big shout out to Luke Lewis. The next game was the game where we got the call from New Zealand. Scotty was most happy. It was 4 tries to 3. Cowboys over a very flat Penrith side at their secondary stadium. Casey McLean went over for tries. Isaac Tago and Luke Garner. There's a bit of a surprise there. I've had him a couple of times, and he hasn't gone over for me. Murray Talagi, we did get this one as well. Murray Talagi we had as the banker into Jackson Purdue. Geez, he's a great young kid. They all rap Lockie Galvin. I rap Jackson Purdue from the very start. And he hasn't fully grown into his body yet. He's playing out of position, but I think he can play a multitude of positions, to be honest with you. Murray Talagi went over again for a double. Scott Drinkwater and Nathan Cleary, both 3 from 4 for Scott Drinkwater. He missed 1, and 3 from 3 for Cleary. Cleary looked quite dejected and really didn't have the answers during the press conference that we watched last night. Now, I sent those to the boys in the Monster Cup tipping, and I hope they really enjoyed it. It took me a good hour to post off all the individual, the 16 teams that were actually having their press conferences, and it's really good. You can gauge what the coach thought and the captain thought about the game, and give you a bit of homework study anyway of what they thought. Let's look at the possession rate here. It was 51. They've really made Todd Payton most excited over the last. His press conference was very enthusiastic, and I think it was just really good to see them. We're really sick of us supporters are really sick of Penrith just winning everything. So we're happy to see a bit of vengeance, and I'm sure these players are playing with vengeance for all the times they had to get strangled by the way Penrith play. So it's fantastic. The missed tackles. This is telling for Penrith. Don't be scared to tip against them in the following weeks either. Even if Edwards comes back, they're still missing, as Scotty said, they're still missing Luai, and there's something in the middle that's missing as well. And it's not just Luai. I think there's just something missing this year. I think, as Coach Cleary said, they're in uncharted waters, and I think they're going to cop a few more shellackings like this one. Missed tackles 41 to Penrith and only 25 to Cowboys. They were there to win for sure. Tackles made, it was 360 for Cowboys and 345. That's surprising. Kicking meters, of course, with Cleary in there, 573, 552 for Cowboys. The kicks, 21, a lot more kicks from the Cows. All meters run. They ran an extra 100 metres, but basically those missed tackles were really a feature of this stat, and that's that you're not going to win when you've done double more missed tackles than your opposition. So that's a telling blow. 51% to 49% possession. And the all runs, Penrith ran a lot, but really, they just had no answer for the Cowboys. And congratulations to Peyton to get 2 in a row, and congratulations, Scotty. We don't enthuse any $100 bets here. $100 would be my monthly allowance here on EPAW. But according to sources, he put his money where his mouth is for a change, and, and collected the bickies of 9-2. Now the next game, as we get the right page here, it is this was an amazing match. One of our special guests that's coming on very shortly, Slavko, he will be on EPAW in the next couple of weeks. We watched South. I was writing them off with at least 20 to 22, 23 minutes left. I'd lost so many players to injury, including Parker. So once Corey went off, it was this madness there in the middle. So many players had to change position, and Roosters were right on top in that game. Let's have a look at the stats. Totola went over to Tavita Totola for the Rabbitohs. Jai Gray scored again. He's scoring at least every second match, if not twice, and then out of every 3 matches. Isaiah Tass went over. Brendan Smith. Sandon Smith. Damn you! How many times have we stood you out, Sandon Smith? That really hurt, that one. But Latrell Mitchell, that last pass, everyone's talked about it. He made 2 major errors looking for the 40-20, but that's how Latrell is. He'll go for something that's outrageously good if it comes off, and if it doesn't, he makes up for it somehow. That's how his game has always been. He'll if he has an error, he'll make up for it. And that pass to win the game was just an amazing feat. But it was one you saw when it paid off. It was like, yeah, that's a makeup. That's an apology for those 2 kicks out of the full for 40-20s. Let's just have a little drink here. Be nice to get a milk sponsor. Look after your bones with milk. And let's have a look here. At halftime, it was 8-6. Bunnies led. Penalty goals, not that significant. But it was all Latrell Mitchell's glory, wasn't it? It truly was. Roosters, what can you say about Roosters? They've looked like winning a couple of their games. I don't know what the coach has got to do there. They're still waiting for a couple of players to come back from injuries, so they need to pick their game up. Very good win, very gutsy win for South, which has put them up in the top 4. So most tackles was Connor Watson. I won't say porn star look of Connor Watson. He's a very, very nice man. He suffered so many bad injuries, but he was the 44 tackles. That's massive from Connor Watson. And they missed him last week. Remember I told you that was the clinch when I tipped East, and Watson was nearly knocked out, and he had that week away from the game. So big difference there, but they still went down to the Bunnies. 37 tackles for Lachlan Hubner. Most meters run week after week. This Dally M leader of the competition, 257 from Jai Gray, 240 Tedesco. God, he tries so hard. It's really exasperating to see his face sitting there with his coach after a loss from East. He's just, yeah, it's not good for Teddy. As much as Scotty puts a lot of crap on him, he's an animal. He just loves football so much, and he's not a pensioner, so shut up, Scotty. Okay, how dare you call him a pensioner? Curse you. Okay, let's go to the next game. That was such an exciting game to watch, and I'm glad I shared it, watching it with Slavko. who made a trip up from Banksia. So it's good to see him. And I can't wait to have him on the program. We're really going to dig that brain of his. And he knew as much as what you when we were looking at the game. So a guy that was great at all sports, should have played cricket for Australia and even soccer. An amazing sports. When you go down to the park with Slavka, you couldn't get him out. You'd have to say, mate, you've got to retire. Some of these young kids want to have a bat. Okay, we'll get back to the serious stuff now anyway, because he's coming on in a couple of weeks and that'll be great to have him here. Saturday games, over to the Saturday games. And it was Parramatta in the field goal. Another field goal loss for Dragons. Coach Flanagan must be pulling his hair out. And he hasn't got that much left, but I'll tell you, geez, that's exasperating as a tipster, isn't it? A coach, a player, a fan, fair income. And by all players of Zach Lomax, they snuffed two of his attempts out during the Golden Point extra time. But, geez, he snapped that last one over good. What a great kicker. But Parramatta finally lifted. And with the inclusion of Dylan Walker, they definitely gave Dylan Brown a lot more room to move. He had a lot more freedom, and he had a much better game. I'm looking forward to Dylan Brown coming over to my hapless Ninths at the moment. We'll go for that game later on. But it was 23-20. Let's have a look at some stats that might be vital to us going forward and fully analysing this match. But watching it, it was an entertaining game. And I did have a feeling Parramatta was finally going to lift, especially against the hatred of that drawn grand final back in, what was it, 77, the replay grand final. And Cronin, all the great players, Price. But there's always been that rivalry. And Clint Gutherson, although he might have got a few jeers through the game, I think it was he had an absolute blinder. He crossed the line twice. Christian Tuapolota, please, every time I stand you out as a banker, you let me down. Every time I don't, you go over. But anyway, we did get one here. We got Iongi as a try scorer, but we had the wrong St George player. I think we had Damien Cook and Flanagan. Dear, oh dear. Another one that gets under the guard. When I don't have Flanagan, he'll score. But anyway, I don't think it was a smart bet. But Christian Tuapolota, yeah, if he was the banker, then we would have got at least two collects because we had Josh at our car. We threw him in there, and Isaac Tiongi or Iongi, who's playing out of his skin. I think he's a star of the future for Parramatta. And good to see them for their fans to get off the bottom of the barrel. Valentine Holmes had a hot and cold game, I felt. Let's have a look at the halftime score was 14-8. And yet again, St George have blown the lead like they did against South Sydney. And that was their other 1 point field goal loss. 54% possession to 46 to Parramatta. So that's interesting. Usually Parramatta can't hold the ball, so their possession rate is really sadly lacking. So they had more possession and St George made a lot of fundamental errors, I thought, unforced errors. All meters run, very similar, very, very similar. Kicks, a lot more from Parramatta, 20 to 15 for Saints. Kicking meters here, 537. A lot more for St George than Parramatta. Tackles made, very interesting. Yet again, a very telling stat. Tackles made, 315 for Parramatta, 351 for Saints. That's going to gas you. Every time that'll gas you. Missed tackles. Surprisingly, Parramatta had the most missed tackles, but they did have some great try-saving tackles as well. The most tackles came from Sean Lane, bit of a work animal, the old Sean Lane. 40 for Toby Catherine. Geez, he had a solid game in the middle there. Shame they don't give him the ball enough, I feel. Most run meters, Valentine Holmes 160, but 222 for Isaiah Iongi. He was everywhere. I honestly was really impressed with Iongi, and I think every time you see him, he seems to improve every match. I really have a good feeling about him. Most line breaks, King Gutho played out of his skin, and it was a shame to see Saints go down, but not a shame, I guess, to see Parramatta finally get their first win. And we'll go over to the next game now, which was the afternoon game of Titans and Dolphins. A one-act affair here to the outsiders, the Dolphins, 36-10. Titans, yes, they had the Tino F chucked in the sin bin, which might have made a big difference at that time and momentum for Titans, but they really didn't show up in any case. Desi can say what he likes, and I agree with him. I fully agree with him about the target is way too high as far as just keep on sending players off into the sin bin, and it can change matches just as much as the 6 again can flatten your petrol tank. It really can sway a game, but I don't think there was any excuses here. I really think Dolphins come to win and come to play. And Wolfie, isn't he? Have you seen how strong the guy is in the press conference? But strong mentally, and he just knew, and he had all the confidence in the world that his Dolphins were finally going to win. Jermaine Osako had a brilliant game and 5 from 5 conversions, phenomenal. And Jaden Campbell, only 1 from 2, a little bit disappointing. Brimson went over, and Sami, this is one of our cross-combo ones again, there where we really didn't have enough, because we didn't tip the Dolphins, we didn't have enough Dolphin try scorers in there. I did warn you that one of their forwards would go over. I wasn't quite sure whether it was going to be Plath or Nichols, but of course Plath scored from an amazing bomb that went straight into his arms. And Lemueli had a very, very big game as well. They got some big dudes, and the hammer finally went over. So had we made him the banker, then we would have collected the bickies. So we had cross combo there. But in any case, the 2-point field goal, there was only one that Osako went for, and that would have been just before half time. It was 16 to nil at half time. The writing was on the wall at that stage, if you ask me. And let's have a look at the possession rate. Dolphins had far more possession. Well, if you've got possession and you're going to hold the ball, you're going to win. So 55-45 over the Gold Coast there. All runs. They ran a lot. Dolphins 216, fully hungry, fully energised. I don't know why Titans just didn't. I don't think they took Dolphins 100% serious. I really don't. Maybe the best side just won pound for pound. Let's look at the all-run meters. Wow. 1,900 all-run meters for Dolphins and only 1,400 for Titans. Well, they basically didn't hold the ball. Without the ball, you're not going to run many meters, are you? Kicking meters, good kicking game there from Titans, but it didn't make a difference. Tackles made, very important, this one. 352 to the Dolphins and 337. So that was fairly even, a lot more though from the Dolphins. So they defended when Titans did have the ball a lot better. Missed tackles 25-26, right down the middle, so to speak. But I'll tell you what, they're professional players like Daniel Saifidi. He had a blinder. I thought Kafosi had a great game as well. And just their experienced players really shone and Herbie Farnworth was all over the place. Shame he didn't go over because he was one of our second bankers there. But in any case, we're close but no cigar there because we didn't have Sami. And the guy we did stand out got pulled out before the game. That might have made a difference, Jojo Jafita, because it really threw the whole setup of the Gold Coast Titans. They had to really mix and match their what they'd been rehearsing all week, I'd imagine. So that was a really good win to the Dolphins, and congratulations, Wolfie. I somehow like his coolness. He's a strong-looking dude. I reckon that you could put him a Guernsey on him and getting him out there himself, honestly. He looked ripped. He truly did. But I know, hats off to Wolfie and hats off to the Dolphins. This was the first time they really showed how good they were when they just got knocked out of the competition by the Knights to just miss the playoffs last year. And it's going on to the next game now. This is one of Scotty's favourites, of course. It was pretty tight at half time. 46 Broncos over West Tigers 24. A very, very high scoring match. I thought it was going to be. 70 points scored in the match. 7 tries to 5. There was a few things that I imagine that Broncos could tidy up. I was disappointed with myself because we had all the try scorers in there, but too much focus on Reece Walsh to go over. I was really disappointed because I stood out Adam Reynolds a couple of weeks ago, and Adam Reynolds, of course, after he scored that chip try, it was like a Stevie Mortimer try, fantastic. Had we stood him out, then we would have got all the legs. It was fantastic because we had Starfatoa. We also had Taruvia for the West Tigers. But my mistake. Reece Walsh just didn't cross the line again. Shibasaki went over again. Billy Walters, he's another one we usually have at good odds, 6-7 to 1. Jeffy Arthur, there's always low odds on. He went over twice. Xavier Willison, you would have got better odds. He was around about 9 to 2. Martin Reynolds was about 3 to 1, 7 to 2. So good value there. Let's have a look at the stats. The sin bins, 1 each, 1 apiece. Stafford Tower and Brenton Nakora. At halftime was 14-12, so there was nothing really in it, but you sensed that the Broncos were going to put the foot down in that second half, and that's exactly what happened. Pretty much possession rate was the same, 51 to 49. Tigers over Broncos, all runs meters, pretty much the same there. A little bit more run there from West Tigers, though, and a little bit more for all runs meters. Kicks, 16, maybe too many kicks there because it didn't really pay off for the West Tigers, but they were really monstered up there at Broncos home ground. Kicking meters, it was 368 for Broncos, and when you've got two great halves like that, it's one goes off with a strained hamstring, and Ben Hunt just stood up with shining colours. And when you've got those two kickers, you're really going to dominate field possession. And let's have a look here. Tackles made, 248 for Broncos, and these are the stats where you see your team need to improve on. 274 tackles made. That's going to gas any side. So virtually 30 more than what Broncos had to make. And missed tackles are fairly even, but the other stat, tackles made, that's going to gas you because you're not holding the ball. You're not keeping possession. 32, Terrell May's become an absolute work animal since he came over from the Roosters. Patrick Carrigan's always a buffalo. I'd call him a buffalo horse, if there is such a thing. He's just such a work animal, such a solid player. Patrick Carrigan, a very, very important linchpin for the Broncos. Most run meters, 170, Patrick Carrigan. And Terrell Mays. We've won those two stats there. Line breaks, Xavier Willis, and GC played out of his skin. It's good to see him get the ball more. Yeah, you're a big unit. You've even got a bit of mobility. So get involved more, Xavier. Fantastic. Great to see. Reece Walsh still hasn't hit those straps 100%. We'd like to see him. When he does, Broncos may be invincible. Let's go back here. But they do still need to clean up a lot of them. There's a lot of gaps there, and West will do that to you. They like throwing the ball around. Very entertaining game, in fact, it was. But especially if you're a Broncos fan like Scotty, and that horse's head will be getting bigger on his chest every time we get to see Scotty in the flesh. The next game was the Sunday match. It was Storm just dominated. Not early, but just before the second half, they opened up, and it ended up being another high-scoring match. 48 defeated Seagulls 24 at Brookie or Four Pines Park. And yet again, they got all the penalties early, Manly, and they looked like they were really going to give Storm a run, but I was very convinced even before the match that Storm were not going to lose 2 games in a row, and they very rarely do. So the professionalism of Storm shone through in copious amounts, 2 times into that in the game. It was 8 tries to 4 in the end. It really looked like Manly pulled up stumps and said, we're just out of, we want to get out of here. We want to go have an early shower. They fought back a little bit at the end, and I think the coach was not exactly happy that Bellamy for the Storm. I really don't think he was overly impressed the way they let Manly back in, but Manly can do that to you as well. Tyron Wishart, I didn't realise that. He'd taken over the kicking role because Pappy. What's Pappy done? I'm not quite sure. He might have had a bit of tightness in the hamstring, but he kicked very well, Pappy, and they got 8 conversions from 8 attempts. Stefano Utokomano, I really wanted to have him as my banker. Jason Saab, we had most of the players there, but not the right standout. But at least we collected with Cameron Munster going across the line. I did tell you if we let him go, he's going to get us. Finally, he crosses over at 9 to 2, 4.5 to 1. Grant Anderson scored a treble, did he? Yeah. And Ryan Pappenhausen, Jack Howarth went over. Let's have a look at the other stats. It was 18-10 at half time. But when they came out in the second half, you didn't even think Manly were actually on the field. The tries were just one after the other off the kickoffs. And the all-run meters, very, very similar, a little bit more for Manly, for Melbourne over Manly, 53-47%. Not much of a telling fact there. Tackles made, this is a telling fact. It's gonna gas you again. 313 tackles made for the Eagles and only 270 for Melbourne Storm. A very, very telling factor here, ladies and gentlemen, with the statistics. 37 missed tackles to Storm, surprising. That's probably when they let Manly back into the match a little bit for some consolation tries, and 34 to Manly, 37 to the Storm. Most tackles, Harry Grant, an absolute legend of a player, and 37 most tackles for Jake Travojevic, another work pack animal, What did I call him? A buffalo horse. Grant Anderson, most run meters. Well, probably because he scored some of the length of the field tries, or 3/4 of the lengths. 201 there, and Lehigh Hopewadi 162. Geez, I was really hoping he'd go over. We would have got another collect there. Most line breaks 4 and 4. Anderson and Totu Kola. I had him every week. I let him go this week and he goes over for a double. Typical. But a most entertaining game. It was really interesting listening on the radio, and I watched the extended highlights the next day. And Manly are always such strong supporters. Boo, boo, boo. They boo everyone. They expect every decision to go their way, especially on the radio. It's I don't know where the commentary box is, but it's really close to the fans, and you can just hear them. They want every penalty decision. A lot of the referees do get pressured into giving them a lot of penalties at 4 Pines Park, but they went like church mouses when Storms just went bang, 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 bang before those tries in the second half. It was interesting what Moore said on ABC. He said, well, I can just hear jangling of keys of people going home in their sports cars back to their Manly properties or their beachfront properties. Very, very interesting. It's very entertaining, those two commentators, and Luke Lewis, an expert indeed. So not much to learn out apart from Storm do not like losing. So if you're coming up against them after a loss, watch out. I just thought without Turbo, they were probably 20% down in ability, but Melbourne, an angry Melbourne, they're going to make you sting. And if you're missing tackles and they have to make us so many more tackles, they're going to hurt you. Now, this is the last match. Of course, Warriors had the bye. This is the match that hurt me because I love the Bulldogs for my late wife, and I really enjoyed the way they played over the last year, and I sneakily backed them to win the comp, and we got knocked out by Manly. Boo! Though no one would have beaten Penrith or Melbourne at that stage, but this year they're undefeated, 20-0. It was damn hard to watch. I went to the club next door. I won't tell you where I am, but I went to the club next door, and I felt like getting into a few heated arguments with some of the yobs that were having way too many beers on a on a Sunday. Ease up, fellas. You know, they're another 10 or 15 years older than me. So I said, no, don't go down that path. Just put your earplugs in and watch the game. And what I saw was just tackle after tackle after tackle. 2-0 at half time. I did warn Scotty, who tipped the Knights, they're going to be gassed in the second half, mate. It's going to come. They lost two players. Schiller, a very important winger for the Knights, and their main forward, who pulled his hammy, the brother of Saifidi, the one that didn't leave Newcastle, in a run out onto the ground, pulled his hammy. So that was devastating, and a lot of big reshuffles. And as Kalen Palmer said in the press conference, the young boys that stood up, like Thomas Can and a few of the other players that had to shuffle around, covering for the players that were missing. Like, fancy losing two of your best players in the first minute and a half of the game. I knew we were shattered before that because we're already missing Dylan Lucas. God knows how long Dylan Lucas is going to be out. He is a linchpin of this side. I did try and tell Scotty, without Dylan Lucas, mate, Bulldogs are going to make Knights pay. And especially not being at Marathon where they get a big vocal crowd behind them. But anyway, they did show a lot of heart, a lot of guts. And Coach O'Brien, he did really stick behind what he said. And he said, I was just very, very, very proud of the Knights, but there's 2 points that goes begging there. And man of the match, Kurt Mann, good on you, buddy. Love you, mate. We had him in our try scorers, but unfortunately we had him into Bradman Best. And with Bradman Best not going over, well, no one went over for Newcastle. That's how Canterbury can strangulate. Very similar formations to what Penrith have done over the last 4 or 5 years. Josh Curran went over. Jack Todd, good to see the youngster come from the country and go over. And Kurt Mann went over twice, one disallowed, and it was just great to see him there at the press conference, still sporting a black eye. That guy is a mad animal. He's been around forever, but something about him in Canterbury, every time he plays with Canterbury, Canterbury look invincible. And every time he doesn't, like when he broke his shoulder after playing was it the Cowboys that they played? And it was a tough game. And he broke his shoulder, and I just thought, oh man, there goes my tip for him to win the comp. Because without Kurt Mann, he did so much defence, so many hit ups. He plays like a utility player, just off the edges. I gave him the superior man of the match and probably the man of the round, along with Adam Reynolds. But anyway, thanks very much for joining us here. We'll just have a quick look at those stats before. We need you to like, subscribe, or dislike. It doesn't matter. If you don't like, if you think I've said something that's upset you, write it in the comments. I'll get back to you no matter what. If it's constructive, that's even better. But please join us. Usually every Thursday. I'm in and out of interviews. I was a little bit late bringing the program on today. I had to go into an office for 3 hours and just sit there and make out as though I was doing something. Just to keep the bosses happy. But in any case, we're back on usually Wednesdays or Tuesdays or Wednesdays, preferably Tuesdays. We will do the program, but because I've got to do this every Monday and Tuesday to keep these people happy that I'm working for, I need to do it just a little bit later, like 12:30 or 2:30, by the time I come home from the office. But thanks for joining us. But as I said, please like, subscribe, dislike, like, but mainly like. Please like, subscribe. It's free, and you'll get some of the best tips. And as I said, our new system is we're going to give you our main 2 players, and you can have them, multiply them any way you want, or multiply them, whatever, how many times you want to have them. My doubles are no more than $2.50 each, because we're going doubles every time we play a treble. We got one on the weekend only because it was this little spec bet. We got one with one of the games with the Jackson Purdue game, but it's best to just have 2 leagues, one with value and one as your banker that usually is a prolific try scorer. That's what we try and do here on EPAW. And the tip of the month, according to Scotty, was the Cowboys at $4.85. Whether he had a lousy 100 on or not, only the punting gods know. But we'll take his word for it, and we believe him. But what a great tip it was, because he was so solid for them. Had it not been for the chalk dust, it would have been an interesting game had it went to extra time. But I think probably the best side did win for the Cowboys there over the hapless Penrith Panthers. I think the rot's going to continue on for a while. Cleary looked totally discombobulated there in the in the review after the game, and I don't think the post-match review, and I think he's got a lot of homework to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on EPAW. Every point's a winner. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Love you all. Drive safely. It's really crappy weather here in Sydney today, and it's even a little bit cool. So enjoy your day, and we'll see you here on Thursday for our selections for round number 6. Thank you very much. God bless from Axel.